Hashem, today's daf yomi is Menachos daf Samach Gimel, Menachos 63. We're going to start the Mishnah on the top of Samach Gimel Amud Aleph. The Mishnah says, "Haomer harei alai b'machavas." A person says, "I am going to give a machavas." That's a type of a mincha. Then lo yavi b'marcheshes. He's not allowed to bring a marcheshes, which is a different type of mincha. If he says b'marcheshes, I'm going to bring a marcheshes. Lo yavi b'machavas. He's not allowed to bring a machavas. So the Gemara says, well, what is the machavas? What's the marcheshes? Ma bein machavas and marcheshes. So first attempt, marcheshes yesh la kisoy, machavas ein la kisoy. The first attempt is marcheshes has a cover to it. The machavas has no cover. That's one theory. That's the position of Rabbi Yossi Aglilu. Rabbi Yossi Aglilu, Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, Omer marcheshes amuka. The marcheshes was a deep pan, deep fried. Umaseh rochashin, and its contents were softer, moving. Rashi says like romsin, like creepy crawly, romes. Whereas machaves is tzafa. The machavas was flatter, umaseh kashin, and therefore the product was hard. So my time, the Rabbi Yossi, what's the basis for Rabbi Yossi's position that the marcheshes means covered and machavas is uncovered? It maybe comes from the fact like the hidden things of the heart. As it says, that in his heart he had a good. He said good, basically. And machavas the asya amachbue apem. Machavas, which is uncovered, comes from the speakings of the mouth. Like a person barks. So we know that menaveach is to bark. So maybe that's what it is. Marcheshes means covered up, like the inner secrets of the heart, and machavas is the speaking, which is revealed. But it could also be the opposite. Machavas is the asya amachbue. Maybe machavas is it comes from the hidden things of the heart. Like Lavan said to Yaakov, why did you hide with Roach? Why did you hide to run away? And Marcheshes, the Atzia Arakushe, comes from the moving of the lips. Kida Inchi, like people say, have a Merachshon, Stifo Seha, so that you shall, Merachshon Siftota, that your lips are moving. Ela Gemara Gemirala. So since it could be read either way, it's just a tradition. Rashi says the words Gemara Gemirila mean it's a law from Moshe at Sinai. Rambam says Gemara Gemirila means it's just a tradition that's the teaching. So they had a tradition that the marcheshes is covered and the machavas is uncovered, or that marcheshes is deep fried and machavas is flat fried. It says the Gemara marcheshes amucha, marcheshes. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Omer says that the marcheshes was deep and the machavas was flat. Marcheshes amuka. Why would we say it's deep? Because everything anything that was done in the marcheshes. So that means it was done in the pan. It was deep. Whereas the machavas is tough and the machavas is flat. Ve'al machavas, and on the machavas. If a person says, a person takes upon himself, I'm going to give him marcheshes, then we have to say, he doesn't say in the marcheshes, he says, Palmi is a marcheshes, yeh munach achi yavu elio. Then we don't do anything. The vow he can't fulfill the vow until Elijah comes. Why? Misafka, because we're not sure what he meant. I al shum kli nikra'u. Does he mean it? Basically, is he saying that is he referring to that there's a utensil is called machavas? The utensil's name is marcheshes, and he's basically saying I am going to give this machavas or this marcheshes to the base of mikdash. Or maybe he's saying I'm going to give something which is masa, the action of rokshin, and uh, and and therefore, or he's going to give something that's soft or something that's hard. So these are the two possibilities. Basil says That's why Rashi explains it. Tosfos explains it that it's really a continuation of the previous Gemara, and that we don't know what Marchashes and Machavas means, and therefore we can't determine. Basil Omrim, Kliyaya B'Mikdash. Basil says there was utensil in the base of Mikdash, U'Marchashes Shema, and the Marchashes was its name. V'Doma Kamin Kalbus Amuk. It looks like this Kalbus, which was deep, basically like a deep frying pan, which was done in like the shape of a U. And when the dough was placed in it, it looked like these apples, these apples that were round, and these Greek acorns. Rashi says ba'alonim shekorin, chestnuts, basically, like the acorns that grow in the oak trees that are called chestnuts. That's a different discussion. Basil is saying that this goes according to the position that says it's deep, not according to the position that says that it was covered. So it's different. So that's a good question. So we say v'omer v'kol na'aseh b'marchashes v'al machavas, and it also states that that everything that was done in the marchashes and on the machavas, which means that the marchashes is deep. Alma shum ha kelim nikru v'lo shum ha'seim. So we see from here that the marchashes was called that because of the way their utensil was shaped, but not because of their action. That one is deep and one is flat. Okay, so now up to the next Mishnah. If a person says "Arei alai b'tanur," says I'm going to make my mincha in an oven. They're not allowed to bring something that was baked in a kupach oven. So their ovens did not look like our ovens. Their ovens were basically vertical, and they had the fire coming up from the bottom. There was more like our stoves, and it was just a question of how much stuff they had, how much space they had on top. So the kupach, they had space for one pot at the top, Rashi says. So you couldn't do it in that. V'lo ma'aseh rafim, and not anything that was baked on a tile. Rashi says tables, the tiles. It had to be baked in a bigger oven. V'lo ma'afei yoros arvayim, and not anything that was baked in the Arabian pots. And that's what they used to bake their bread in. Rabbi Yehuda Omer tanur shnei pamim. Rabbi Yehuda it says in the Torah tanur twice. V'achshir mafei kupach, to say that even a kupach oven is okay. Rabbi Shimon Omer tanur shnei pamim. Why does it say the tanur twice? Echad shetei afiyasa metanur. One is to tell us that it was supposed to be baked in the oven. Ve'echad sheyeh hektisha metanur. And one is that before that not only is it supposed to be baked in the oven, but it's supposed to be consecrated in the oven as well. But that's where it's consecrated. When Mislay Reb Shimon Isfar, does Reb Shimon really say it's supposed to be consecrated in the oven? But now Reb Shimon Omar will have a ragil Omar shtei lachem apanim ksheros ba'azaro ksheros bebeis pagi. Rabbi Shimon said that the custom was to say that Karban Mincha is kosher in the courtyard. The two loaves of bread for Shavuos and the lechem apanim, which was baked for Shabbos, they're kosher in the courtyard, and they're also kosher in the base pagi, which was an area outside the courtyard of the temple. So we see from here it didn't have to be sanctified in the oven. So Amarava shum taner. No, so it means that before the bread was baked in the oven and consecrated, the flour was consecrated with what's called kedushas damim, and it was consecrated for the purpose of the oven. For the purpose of the oven. Rashi says, "Kishayatisheno soas." When you consecrated the flour, you should say, "Almanasla fosa betanar animikdish." In order to bake it in this oven, I consecrated. Somebody says, minchas mafa, lo yavi melchta. If he says, I have upon myself to do a mincha that's baked, he can't bring half of chalos and half of rakikim, which are two different types of loaves. Presumably one was thicker, one was thinner, or they had different amounts of oil mixed in. So Tan Rabbanim v'chitakriv, it says in the pasuk, when you bring a carbon mincha, mafei tanur kishetakriv, means to say, when you want to do this on your own, lasot devar rishus, to do something that is optional, not obligatory, that you don't have to bring it. Carbon mincha. Amar Rabbi, what does that mean? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, minayin la'omer harei minchas mafa. How do we know if you say I'm going to bring a baked mincha, shelo yavi mechza chalos and mechza rakikin? You can't bring. You have to bring 10 loaves. We saw a couple of times already in this chapter, but you can't bring two different types of loaves, half chalos and half rakikin. Tam omer karban mincha, karban echad amarti l'cha v'lo shnayim l'shlosha karban. It has to be the same karban as the voluntary vow that you gave. Amar lo Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon responds because he says you can. So he says, "V'chinemar karban shnei pamim." Does it say karban twice to teach us one that they're two different karbanos? V'alolo nemar ela karban, v'alolo nemar ela karban echad. It says one karban. It says one time the word karban. V'nemar bo chalos u'rikikin, and it also says about that says chalos and rikikin. Chalos matzos or kike matzos. We see that they're the same carbon. Ratzal avi chalos maybe rikikim maybe mechza chalos and mechza rikikim maybe. You can bring half chalos or half rikikim, and then we have a problem because how do you have to do the kamitza from them because they're from two different ones? So after you would bake them, what you would do is bolalan v'kometz mishneim, that you would crush them. You would cut them into small pieces, and we said earlier that this is the hardest avoda, one of the three hardest avodas in the Beit Hamikdash. You would crush them up, grind them down, and then take a kamitza from both of them together. But if in the end you did a kamitza just from one of them, and for both of them, it will be okay. You had a question, Bill? No, you have to mix them together and then scoop them. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer Minayin Omer Harei Menachos. You had a question, Ezekiel? So how do you know that if you say Harei Minchos Mafeh, Shelo Yavi Mechza Chalos Mechzos Rikikin? How do I know that if you say I'm going to give a Minchos Mafeh, this baked mincha, that you shouldn't bring half chalos and half rikikin? So Rabbi Shimon says you can, but he's holding like the Rabbanan. Tam Omer V'chol Mincha Asher Ta'afei B'Tanur. V'chol Na'aseh B'Marcheshes. So it's based upon the pasuk that says "V'chol mincha asher te'afeh b'tanur." Any mincha that will be baked. V'chol na'aseh b'marcheshes v'amachavas lakohen makrivo so lo siyeh, and it will be for the kohen. V'kol mincha b'lulav hashemen v'chareva chol b'nei Aaron tiyeh. Any mincha that was mixed with oil and dried should be to the children of Aaron. What does it mean? Ma v'chol ha'mor mata. Just like the word v'chol that is said at the end of the verse. Refers to shnei minin chalukim, two different types of karbanos, and they're not the same thing. There's the oil one and the dry. Shnei minin chalukim. These are two different types. Also, the Kohat said above, meaning to say that the chalos and rikikin are two different karbanos. So if you say you're going to bring a minchas mafei tanur, you can't fulfill the obligation by bringing half of the chalos and half of the rikikin. You had a question?
To commit some extra.
I have to see the exact citation. If you give me the exact citation, I could try and see what the distinction is. But I don't remember. I don't remember what you're referring to, sir. Rabbi Yehuda Shapir Ka'amar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda, how would he explain it? He says Rabbi Shimon is correct that chalos or kikin are one carbon. Amar Lach, Rabbi Yehuda, meaning say, how would Rabbi Yehuda explain this? Because Rabbi Yehuda says it's not good if it's half chalos, half kikin. Amar Lach, Rabbi Yehuda would say, how would he explain the fact that it only says one carbon and it says marchashes and then chalos and kikin? So he says, Kivin nechsev bashemen bashemen. since it says oil twice, it says chalos matzos belus b'shemen or kike matzos mishchum b'shemen. Command of siv carbon. It's like it wrote it twice, and it means it's two different carbonos. And Rabbi Shimon, what would he would do with that? He says he will siv b'shem b'shemen. If it would not say b'shem b'shemen, have amina dafka melch chalos and melch kikin. If it were not saying melch b'shem b'shemen twice, I would say only if it's half chalos and half a kikin. Avachalos l'chudayu or kikin l'chudayu emolol. But I might have thought you had to do chalos, half chalos and half kikin. But if you did chalos by itself or kikin by itself, I might say it's no good. So we say no, it's okay, it doesn't need it. The Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda, I know Avua. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda is the same thing as his father Rabbi Yehuda. According to both of them, you can't bring half chalos and half kikin. So what's the distinction? The distinction is, let's say you did it, is it okay with chatzkila? That's the distinction between them. According to Rabbi Yehuda, who learns it from when it says carbon echad, fulfill your obligation. But according to Rabbi Yossi, his son, who learns from the comparison to Menachos and Chareva, you would not fulfill the obligation, and you still have to bring a new carbon. Menachos, and now we start the next chapter. The next chapter is the chapter Rabbi Shmuel Omer. That's actually only if we're doing the Gemara, but if we're doing the Mishnah, this would be the 10th chapter. So we would not. So there's a different way of addressing it. You had a question, Harold? So we start the 6th chapter of Menachos. The 6th chapter, Rabbi Shmuel. So this deals with the carbon Omer. The carbon Omer is the carbon that was brought on the 16th day of Nisan. That's according to the Rabbanan's interpretation of the Torah. The Torah says when you come to the land, you shall harvest the Omer, and you bring a barley offering, the day after Shabbos. So the rabbi said that day after Shabbos is the first day after Pesach, the 16th day of Nisan, which the Baitusim said it's the first Sunday after Pesach. This carbon Omer was what allowed the new grain to be eaten outside of the Mikdash. On everything that was planted from the previous Pesach could not be eaten until after the Omer offering was brought. So this is going to be the halachos of this. And that's why I was saying upstairs that this is why I think we start with the halachos of Shabbos and this Omer, because according to the Sadducees or the Baitusim, it can never happen on Shabbos because it was always brought the day after Shabbos, on a Sunday. But the Chachamim said it could be brought on Shabbos, and that's the very first halacha. Rabbi Shmuel Omer ayabah b'Shabbos mishalosh sa'in. The Omer would come on Shabbos. If it was brought on Shabbos, it would come from 3 seah of barley. That's a measurement. Whereas Bachol, but if it was brought during the week on the 16th day of Nisan, it will come from Mechamesh, from 5 seorim. The Chachamim Omer echad Shabbos ve'echad Chol. The Chachamim say what both on Shabbos and Chol mishalosh hayabah. It would come from the same, both Shabbos and during the week. It would come from 3 seah and not 5. Rabbi Chanina Skan Kohanim Omer b'Shabbos hayaniktar biyachid. He says if it was done on Shabbos, they would do less of it, and we'll see why. It was harvested only by one person, uba magel, with a echad, and with only one sickle. Uba kuba achas, they would only bring one basket. But it was bachol. But if it was on the 16th day of Nisan, it was just during the week. Bishlosha, they would use 3 people. Bisholosh kupos, 3 baskets. Bisholosh mangols, 3 sickles. The Chachamim Omer echad Shabbos ve'echad Chol, whether it was, I don't know if they actually, I'm translating it as a sickle. I don't know if that's the right English word. It was like this tool to harvest it, that they would cut down the grain. What?
Yeah, this is
Sickle. The Chachamim Omer echad Shabbos ve'echad Chol. The Chachamim say whether it's Shabbos or during the week, b'shlosha, b'shalosh kupos, b'shalosh magos. The Chachamim say it would always be with 3, whether it's Shabbos or during the week. They wouldn't differentiate. Gemara says, Bishlam and Rabbanan, I understand why the Rabbanan who say that both at Shabbos and L'chol, they would do it from 3 sayim, that they would do the same amount. Why? Because Savri, because they're the position, Isaron Muvchar, that one that you need, that the best type of flour, which we're going to use for the barley, flour for the waving offering, will come Bishlosha Sainasi. It will come from 3 sah. So since that's what you need, Voshna b'chol, Voshna b'Shabbos. So it doesn't matter if it's during the week or Shabbos, that's what you need to do. El Rabbi Shmuel, according to Rabbi Shmuel, says on Shabbos it's from 3 seah, but during the week it's 5. Micah Amar, Micah Savar, what's its position? Ika Savar Isaram Muvchar Lo Asi Al Mechamesh. If he says you need 5, I feel b'Shabbos Nami, then you should do it on Shabbos also from 5. V mishoshas, he says if you get it from 3, I feel b'chol nami. Meaning to say, what's Rabbi Yishmael's position? If you're going to say you need it 5, then even on Shabbos you should need 5. You say you need 3, even during the week you should need 3. So Amarava Kasava Rabbi Yishmael Isaron Mufchar below Tircha. Yeah, he said you can get the best flour without too much work. That comes from 5. But to get the best one comes from 3. Betircha, if you have to work hard, then it comes from 3. But so during the week we get it from 5 seah because that's the most beautiful way to do it, because that's how you get the best, from 5. But Shabbos, mutav sheyarbe b'molacha achas, and Shabbos we'd rather you do more work, work a little bit harder and violate Shabbos less, barakada, by continuing to sift it. But don't bring 5 seah, because then you have to do more additional work, because you have to do more harvesting and winnowing and crushing and grinding, 2 extra seah. So we'd rather you do the extra sifting it out to get the amount isaron from 3 seah, so you don't do more violations of the Shabbos. Just do that one violation. You got a question, Harold?
So,
they would do the whole thing on Shabbos. They wouldn't do it beforehand. They did it. Yes. You'll see the Gemara is going to talk about how they went out on the night of the 16th, going into the morning of the 16th, the night after the first day of Pesach. They would go out in the middle of the field and they would harvest it, and it was a whole big tumult. They had to do it that day. Yeah. On Chol Moed itself. Yeah. Oh, excellent question, Ezekiel. I thought this is so. Say it's that there's no malacha on Chol Moed. Well, first of all, you're even allowed to violate the Shabbos, but you see from the fact that they don't draw a distinction on Chol Moed if it's Shabbos or not Shabbos. That means this is the proof for the idea that Chol Moed, the work is biblically permitted. It's only rabbinically prohibited. There's a whole debate amongst Rishonim: is Chol Moed biblically prohibited or rabbinically prohibited? So someone approved from here that this proves it's only rabbinically prohibited, because they're not bothered by doing it on Chol Moed. They're only bothered by doing it on Shabbos. What? Right. So if there's a communal offering, they did it on Shabbos, but not the individual offering. But this is a communal offering. But they said maybe there's less work to do on Shabbos, do it less on Shabbos. But they're not bothered by the fact that it's Chol Moed. But some say it's not a proof, because this is specifically from the Torah to be brought on Chol Moed. Anyway, but it's a very good connection, Ezekiel. Amar Rabbi Yishmael, Amar Rabba, Rabbi Shmuel, who says that you do less violations of the Shabbos to get the work done. He says the same position as Rabbi Shmuel ben Nosha, Rabbi Yochanan Broka, Amru Davar Echad. So that's what Rabbah says, that this position of Rabbi Shmuel is the same as Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yochanan Broka. What do they say? This relates to Pesach. The Tanya Arba Asar Shachalios b'Shabbos. Let's say the 14th day came on Shabbos, meaning Erev Pesach. What we call Erev Pesach is on Shabbos, so they have to bring the Pesach Goem. Now you're supposed to Mavshida Pesach Adachaza. You have to skin the Pesach Goem only until the breast, because that's enough in order to get rid of the emurim, the inner parts, and to burn them on the altar on the 14th day, which is what you're required to do. And after Shabbos, you continue to skin it. Whereas the Chachamim say, no, you have to skin everything. The sages say you skin everything. And the Korban Pesach would override the Shabbos. But you're only supposed to burn those parts. So Rabbi Shmuel ben Osha Brocha says that's all you're supposed to burn. That's all you're supposed to skin, which is a violation of Shabbos skinning. So just do the bare minimum. Whereas the Chachamim say you have to you could skin everything. So the Gemara says, Milo Amar Rabbi Shmuel ben Osha Rabbi Yochanan Brocha Hasam Kol Echad De'Efshar Lo Tarchinon. Just like he says there, as much as possible, we don't want you to violate the Shabbos. Hachanami Kivin De'Efshar Lo Tarchinon. Also here by the Omer, since you could do it with 3 seah, we don't want you to do it with 5. So it's the same position. The Gemara says, no, it's not. Maybe Rabbi Shmuel only says our position here by the Omer, the Lake of Bizayon Kachim, because if you're only going, it's not a disgrace to the Kachim to leave it lying there. But maybe he'll agree with the Chachamim. Lake of Bizayon Kachim, you're going to leave the animal half skinned. It's disrespect to the Kachim. Maybe he'll require it. Maybe he'll hold like the Rabbanan. Or Inami, we're on top of 64a. Adkan will come Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher Rabbi Yochanan Baruch. Maybe Rabbi Shmuel ben Baruch says his position there, Eldest Avilei Tzarach Gavoa, Lo Tzarach Achul Shabbos. But because there he's saying, do whatever is necessary. You've already done it. And so therefore you did what's necessary. You don't need to violate Shabbos. But in this case, with respect to the Omer, that by 3 say you haven't yet done the proper requirement. So since you still need to do the work, maybe you'll hold like the Rabbanan. So the Gemara is going to continue to see whose position in Shmuel is actually consistent with, but that's where we'll stop for today. You had a question.